All right. Good morning, everyone. We are having some technical challenges here, and our moderator is trying to secure a much better computer. In the meantime, my name is Christine Pomerantz. I'm the chair of International Trade and Marketing for the fashion industries, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the Stocking Trade at FIT, the ESG Challenge. Navigating the bedrock issues facing international trade and marketing. These slides were prepared by Bill D'Arienzo, and I'm very pleased to read out to you his thoughts. If you can go back to the second slide, please.
Hold on.
The second, yes. So Bill's thoughts are, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And he's quoted Einstein for that one. Brands active in international trade and marketing have always had to navigate the protocols, cultures, and shifting legal sands as part of global trade realities. Now, a startling new dimension, ESG, has burst upon us, demanding disruptive protocols and insisting on displacing traditional ways of thinking and their time-tested norms. Change is disruptive, but given the urgency and the uniqueness of the sustainability challenge, we cannot rely on prior models to provide solutions. So we are being called upon to formulate new modes of thinking, previously unimaginable business strategies, and design new but untested business models, and to take calculated risks. To do so, we first need to literally get to the bottom of things. Why have we struggled to implement and accelerate ESG solutions? What can we do differently? We need to drill down and understand the bedrock issues. Then these can become the new foundations for a new world vision and a way forward. So this forum will offer insights and strategies on these four bedrock issues. Next slide.
Hello.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm
Okay.
coming in late, but
Bill,
I'm
we
here.
read your first two slides, so we are now in slide 3.
Okay, I see it. No problem.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Go
Thanks,
ahead.
Christine, for pinch hitting for me. And welcome, everybody. I must be in cyberspace, but my feet are on the ground with you. So, the four areas that we want to focus on, as outlined in the slide, are new regulatory challenges to global trade, which we're going to see comes from not only US FTC and what have you, but also from the EU. And we're going to chat a little bit about that. And of course, if you're a global brand, that impacts you as well. Second, to reconcile ESG with business growth. The investment in ESG can be considerable, but perhaps as well, and more so, can be the ROI. So we want to chat and think a little bit in those terms. Thirdly, the greenwashing issue is truly global. And because brands are global and national, the challenge is even more, if you will, total and intense. But again, this is a key issue, and we'll look at how marketing is impacted a little. And then finally, legal issues about protecting brand integrity, how one thinks about ESG initiatives and company values, and we'll continue along that pathway as a conclusion. Thank you. Next slide, if you will. I'm so proud and honored to have this esteemed panel and to be the moderator for this event. Let me begin with Sydney Price. She's up in the upper right-hand corner there. Hello, Sydney. There you go. Founder and CEO of The New Purpose. And again, this is from her website, to advance conscious leadership through business sustainability, excuse me, and leadership development. This is a think tank of what we are all about in the ESG CSR sustainability journey. And I think the important thing here as well is to think about conscious leadership and the fact that very often we leave out CSR. We think of kind of ESG has eclipsed CSR. And that's probably an error because CSR often relates to internal corporate leadership. Is that right, Sydney? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You got
Okay.
it, Bill.
All right. And so we want to see the convergence of the external environmental concerns and symbolized by ESG, but all great solutions begin internally inside a company, as all great marketing does. So we need to get our ducks in order internally in order to orchestrate them and move them in the right direction externally. Can I see the next slide, please? Pamela Church, Esquire, is a partner at Baker McKenzie, one of the most prestigious law firms, not only in the US, but globally. She was honored and well-deserved, no less, as one of the top 250 women in intellectual property law. She is a scholar and a practitioner of the first order. How's that, Pamela? Did I hit it right?
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
Well, I say what is, and that's what is. I've often followed Baker and McKenzie, and now I'm delighted to meet you, Pamela, as I've worked on, as a so-called, I'll say, expert opinion reporter, writing expert opinion reports for Gucci, Adidas, and some firms like that. So I'm very proud to be with you on this panel because that's part of my focus and my interest as well. I'm supposed a subject matter expert, but I put that in quotes, okay? All right, can I have the next panelist, please? The next is a dear friend and great colleague of mine, Gian Mario Bornei, founder of GMB Associates Milano and a professor at Bocconi in the MBA program, I should have added, and the global consultant on trade and supply chains. I want to say supply systems, but Mario will have none of it. He just doesn't want to grab my new nomenclature. He has written one of the finest books on this issue of converting and transforming the traditional project management mentality in supply chains to a brand mentality. And in fact, I have the book right here. I know you probably don't believe me, Gian Mario, but I'm looking at it. The Branded Supply Chain, literally in my office, sitting up on my desk. All right. And it's a wonderful book. You should all take a look at it because it captures the future of what sustainability will need to do, i.e. to begin to brand itself, no? And to move forward on a new consciousness of the values that we all need to embrace and prior to that communicate to each other. Gian Mario, did I do okay on that?
Bill, thank you so much for the introduction. You did very good. Hello to everybody. Good morning.
Okay, so next panel, please. Okay, we should probably do this last. Christine, what do you think? Christine?
Yes, we can save it for last. So
Let's take this off.
unfair.
This is my great crescendo, my final, okay, point of consequence. All right, let's begin with the panel, and I'm going to begin thinking about ESG and sustainability. We know that, as I pointed out, this is a key starting point in the sustainable journey. So let me begin with Sydney. Is it possible to become, Sydney, a fully sustainable fashion company?
Thanks, Bill, for the question. And I think I'd just like to start that the meaning and the term of sustainable fashion right now is very unclear. So I just like to start off to say I like to define it as the movement and process of fostering change to fashion products and the fashion systems towards greater ecological integrity and social justice. So what that means is sustainable fashion concerns are more than just addressing fashion textiles or products. It comprises the whole entire fashion system. So fashion plays a major role in the global economy, and it's worth over $2.5 trillion and employs over 3 million people across the entire value chain. However, as most of you know, it is one of the most resource-intensive industries in the world. It has significant impact on communities around the world, and it has a huge climate footprint. So the fashion carbon footprint is huge. Pesticides are used in cotton farming, toxic dyes are used in manufacturing, waste discarded. So it also is estimated that it uses over 90 billion cubic meters of water, and that is enough for 5 million people to survive each year. Another interesting fact is historically, we have not recycled as a society. In the US, consumers throw away shoes and clothing an average of 70 pounds per person annually. And sadly enough, up to 95% of textiles end up in landfills. So there is a surge of companies responding to the social and climate crisis, which is very positive, but it can be difficult to know whether you're being a responsible consumer or buying into greenwashing. To be considered genuinely sustainable, brands need to entirely change their supply chain, and this can be cost prohibitive for many companies. And honestly, I do not know of any fashion brand in the world that is fully sustainable. So I think at this point, we can only do better than we're doing now. But it is definitely an evolution for all of us.
Okay, Sydney, is there a pathway that you see that can be global? In a sense, I mean, we see Glasgow and we see COP27. Are those meaningful in your judgment?
I think the biggest thing needs to happen, and one of our Pam's definitely a better expert at this, but I think there needs to be major regulatory changes because, just for example, last week in New York City, salaries now need to be transparent if your company is over a certain threshold of revenue. So I think every country has different objectives and goals. And so a lot of the countries we're manufacturing right now, which are third world countries, their country's number one objective is to export to increase their revenues versus first world countries. A lot of them actually want to, shift to help curb climate erosion. So those are just the thoughts. It has to be through regulation, but a global regulation, which we really don't have at this point.
Okay. Pamela, Sydney mentioned something about greenwashing and green communication. Can you tell us a little bit, in your view, how can fashion companies legally convey environmental impact commitments? Where are the risks and the pitfalls in those communications?
Okay, well, first, let me just kind of set the stage for how I get involved in these issues. My practice focuses on IP issues, trademarks, copyrights, patents, trade secrets. Many of my clients are luxury and fashion brands, and in counseling them and representing them, I advise them on marketing issues, including advertising, which is, through major media, social media, use of influencers, etc. Okay. Lately, social and environmental impact issues have become extremely important to them, and that's because it's extremely important to their customers. Consumers are increasingly prioritizing sustainability efforts in their purchasing decisions. They are willing to pay more for sustainable goods. And what this means is that sustainable fashion and transparency about those efforts are becoming ever more important and will in the years to come, and the regulatory and legal issues are evolving around this trend. So when we're talking about marketing, what this is about is these companies being able to communicate about their practices, such as sourcing, ecological footprint, etc. The law says, the FTC Act and the Green Guide say that one should not overstate the ecological commitments. The marketers have to avoid making claims that might be unfair or deceptive. And so the bottom line is you shouldn't make unqualified general claims because it is unlikely that you can substantiate all the reasonable interpretations of these claims of being green, sustainable, etc. You have to get into the details.
Okay, you mentioned the SEC and the FTC. Is there any alignment with EU in this regard?
Well, the EU is also promulgating laws that are similar to what we have in the US. Now, keep in mind, I'm looking at this from the point of view of marketing and making certifications and statements, because that's what I do. The issue is not so much whether the laws are there. The issue is enforcement. Are the enforcement authorities, is the FTC, are the agencies in the EU, other countries actually getting involved in these issues? And at least in the US, what I'd say is that enforcement has primarily involved issues concerning emissions, VOCs, biodegradability, and less about the certifications and claims that companies make about their sustainability efforts, their recycled materials, et cetera, in their product. But we expect that enforcement will continue to increase and broaden as government policies emphasize all of these issues.
Okay, well, thank you, Pamela. John Mario, both Sydney and Pamela talk about what sustainability means and consumer alignments. What's the challenge here? Are fashion companies and consumers truly aligned? And if not, what can be done? And is this something that has to be done globally, as you are a global, if you will, subject matter expert? What's your take and your view of that?
Yes, Bill. Well, I think that this is absolutely a critical point, and I go back to what Sydney was saying earlier about the meaning of sustainability. We are loaded in this world with so many angles and perspectives that is kind of becoming a little bit empty, in a sense that you have definitely a label which concern companies, which concern the financial markets, where ESG and sustainability is getting a concrete meaning. Then we have the consumer level, where particularly when we talk about fashion products, it has become a kind of fashion elements, like a trend, which is a tendency of this industry, not to also, you can see it also with technology and other things, to try to treat it as an element which is temporary, is a fashion trend, you have to adapt. So I think that beside what we call, and Pamela was calling about the greenwashing, we have a kind of green cosmetics. A lot of companies claiming that they are doing some things good, but then the rest, who knows? And I think that this will last for a good number of years. Along this road, we will probably see the two lines getting a little bit closer, but it's a very long way. It's a very long way, because at a certain point we will need consumers to be willing to recognize a value to sustainability, which is today still kind of far away. I believe Bain published a couple of weeks ago a report where they had interviewed a lot of Gen Z people, and they were all, oh, that's beautiful to have a sustainable product, but they were not willing to pay too much. And if they were looking for a dress to use 2 days or to take some nice pictures to post on Instagram, they go for a cheap polyester garment that is gonna end up in waste in very little time. So it's going to be a long way. From the global perspective, I think that more than the global perspective here, what is really relevant is the market segment we take into consideration. Luxury can move much faster. They have much better margin. They can charge high prices. I'm connecting from Italy. Nowadays in Italy, we have probably 80% of the production of products for the top brands, Italian, French, or whoever, and is becoming a very sustainable, is progressively becoming a sustainable system, let's say. For mass market or just premium segments, which were once sent all over the world to get the cheapest cost, things like that, it will take a longer time, and to incorporate sustainability for them is going to be extremely difficult if consumers are not accepting to pay a premium for it.
Well, do you think we need more segmentation marketing? I guess I can almost put that question to everyone, because we seem to have different dispositions to purchase sustainable at higher prices for different market segments. Do we need, for example, brands that are portfolio brands to take a different look, to align different brands with different subset consumer groups? Is that part of what we have to think about here?
Bill, I don't know if that is the angle. I know that is a delicate issue, no? Because for all type of consumptions, you have the highest segments of the market that we can assess different type of products. Obviously, this is there are different situations in different market levels. If you're talking about a $25 to $50 jeans, or you're talking about a $400 to $600 jeans. I don't know what the other panelist thinks, but obviously you have room for different approaches.
Yeah.
Sydney, maybe you can add something here.
Yeah, I think everybody could say something about this. For example, is retail basically aligned with a certain cohort group or a certain set of consumers, and does that make it very, very difficult to charge higher prices for first issue sustainable goods? Anybody want to chip in on that one? I saw you nodding, Pamela, on that.
Yeah, so I do see a trend, and it's interesting because re-commerce or resale use secondhand goods. You would think that was anathema to the luxury sector, right? Well, consumers are reducing waste by increasingly buying sustainable goods and increasingly buying secondhand goods. And the resale market contributes to the circular economy by reducing clothing waste and extending garment life cycles. So what do you actually see happening? The issue for the luxury brands is about product authenticity, okay? So as long as they can participate in this re-commerce market in a way that protects their brand and the authenticity of the products that are swirling in the market, they are going to be involved in that. And so what we're seeing is that through addressing the issue of counterfeits, the luxury market is starting to partner with entities which will allow them to participate in the authentication process. For example, luxury brands partnering with The RealReal for years. So what I think may be happening in the market, and this is just sort of personal observation, is that consumers who care about sustainability and have the pocketbooks to purchase luxury brands are finding it's worthwhile to buy these products. And then they participate, they sell them. They sell them and buy more. They may buy them new. They may buy them secondhand through these I'll call them outlets, but they're not like what we think of outlets, but they're channels where they know they are getting authentic brands. And so strangely, they're actually paying more and they're buying more luxury products, if you follow me. I'm interested whether others see that happening, but I think it's happening in the millennials, that have the pocketbook to pay for these kinds of products.
Sydney, you want to chip in on that? I saw you were about to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to just say something slightly different just to add more depth to the conversation, but I 100% agree with what the last two panelists said. For me, it's all about transparency. I don't care what market segmentation you're in. First of all, no one can be all things to all people. So if whatever your values of your organization are, say it's environment, like Patagonia, and you authentically support that within your supply chain, and you also, through transparency, can show how you're measuring and what you're saying is actually true, I think that is what consumers are most interested in right now. And as Gian mentioned, so many stats out there say the consumer will pay more for sustainable goods, but you know what? I have found, being in this industry for almost 30 years, they really don't. I think it has to be commercially viable, and it has to be gorgeous, and it has to fill a white space in the market. And if it's sustainable at the same time, then that's great. But just to be sustainable is not nearly enough. So I think what I want to just stress is not everyone can be everything to all consumers. And the most important thing is to be transparent and authentic and be able to prove whatever you're saying is accurate.
Gianmario, do you want to put a ribbon
Yes.
around that one? Gianmario?
Yes, I wanted to add a couple of things. First, on the resale market, absolutely. That I think is almost the only very nice sign coming from the consumers, because in a sense you have a luxury product that is bought by someone which can pay the high prices or luxury, then it is put into the market also for other segments, and somehow we reach the point which is the real only answer to the sustainability thing in the long run, is to have products lasting longer instead of using garments as disposable products, making them kind of durable when it's possible. So I think that's a very interesting sign about the resale market. On the side of transparency, yes, Silly, I agree. Although we know that transparency in some cases is a kind of dream, no? Because most of the brands have a kind of visibility, even internally, they have visibility up to maybe 1 or 2 tiers of their supply chains. But we know that textiles have very elongated and confused supply chains. So to be transparent, it will take also some good time. But then the other thing, when I was talking about the segments, there are market segments which are cannot be sustainable. You cannot buy a $20 retail jeans, assuming that it's made paying people in the right way, treating the environment, doing the washing in a company with all the environmental standards. There are certain things that our markets have become accustomed to buy, which are too cheap to be sustainable, and the making them transparent will mean that companies will have to find other solution. Then I would like to add another thing. Maybe with Bill we will go back this on later on. The fashion industry has gone crazy in all the segments, starting from the luxury, going down to the mass market in the last 10 years, with increasing the size of collection, the variety. No, the game was you have to come up on the market with a new collection, a new capsule, a new drop every week. Companies that used to offer, I don't know, 2,000 new items every year, they exploded that to 6,000, 7,000. That makes sustainability very difficult to build into the products because it requires a lot of additional work. So somehow we will have to end in a world where not only consumers will be willing to pay for sustainability, maybe not too much, but at least the consumer will accept a market where brands come up with less variety. How can I say? Because otherwise, build up sustainability into fashion companies is going to be extremely complicated.
No, absolutely. That was wonderful from all three of you. I mean, there's so much to put our arms around, but I'm learning as we go along. This is absolutely wonderful. Thank you all. I want to turn now, if we can, to circularity, traceability, new supply chains. We've already begun to touch on those. There's much going on in this regard. What do we want to think about? If there's a traceability problem, as Gian Mario says, because of the complexity of supply chains, and we want to create a circularity which requires that we can trace back and we know where things are, we know where things are going. For example, we need to think no longer about simply traceability ending at the factory, because it has to go into the end disposal as well. So what do we want to say? Let me begin this one with Pamela. Does technology, and in particular blockchain, help in battling counterfeits and addressing sustainability? Is there something in blockchain that moves us closer to resolution?
It does, absolutely. And I encounter it in my practice mainly on the issue of counterfeits, but it also can help companies and brands track the whole supply chain to show what they are doing and help on that transparency issue. So let's just talk about what blockchain is. Blockchain is a digital ledger used to record transactions and track assets. Once information is added to the blockchain ledger, that information cannot be removed or modified, which ensures transparency and reliability. And this makes it a very strong tool for both anti-counterfeiting and substantiating those sustainability claims. So lately, there's a lot of talk about NFTs, which is a kind of blockchain asset. And what we're seeing is that it can also be linked to real world products, such that it can be used to combat the sale of counterfeit goods. So think of the NFT as a digital passport, which includes the blockchain-based ledgers that verify the authenticity of the physical product. So typically a digital passport is coupled with a smart tag using RFID, QR codes, NFC tools, which are attached to the physical product. So what that means is if you buy a watch that is associated with the NFT, then you can resell it to somebody and the buyer knows it's authentic because it comes with the NFT. This is beginning to happen. I think that over time, there will be much more association of NFTs with physical goods where there's so many different models for how this is done, and the companies are still struggling to figure out how to incorporate it into their business plans. But I think it's going to be quite exciting to see how blockchain is integrated to handle and address sustainability issues on the supply chain side, as well as the focus on the anti-counterfeiting side.
Gian Mario, following up on what Pamela's been mentioning about blockchain. In Europe, amongst the luxury conglomerates, there's this conversation about Aura. They've created this new blockchain. Is that really taking hold over there? Is this a meaningful new way to think about new supply chains?
Yes, there is quite a lot of talking. Aura is a big, kind of a unique enterprise, seen several luxury brands collaborating, although they are competitors, so it's a good sign. There are some other things. There is another one which is called Luxo Chain also. The thing is very nice also because it has a marketing appeal because you can now say that you're with your telephone, you can check for instance, in my master classes, I had them showing how you could follow a croco handbag, and you could go and see actually the name of the original animal, and then how it was transformed into leather in the Everglades, and then how the leather moved from one place. Is a fantastic tool. One thing that is important to stress is the tool is very useful, but it doesn't do it by itself, because you have to make sure that someone credible has been putting the information in the system, in the blockchain system, in the different stages. So it usually goes with a lot of work with auditors in all your manufacturing or stops of the products along the supply chain. So to answer your question, quite a lot of enthusiasm and investment by big brands. Still some little test. I agree the NFT idea is somehow today capturing the blockchain rather than the supply chain. It's much easier to go that way, which is NFT, metaverse, things like that, rather than say, okay, how do we apply this in our supply chain with 4,000 products, 20,000 suppliers, first, in the different tiers or things like that.
It's evolving. It's evolving.
Sydney, you had started to nod on something that that Gianmario was speaking about. There seems to be the ability to have a more circular supply chain here, where we can see things coming and going, so to speak, through blockchain. Is this part of what a fully circular fashion system could look like? Do you see this as a big part of that going forward?
Who's supposed to be?
I had mentioned, Sydney.
Sydney?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The current system for producing and distributing and using clothing operates currently in almost a linear way right now. And there are so many negative externalities at every step of the supply chain, from fiber production to clothing production to product use and after use. And the hope in the fashion industry is to actually shift it from this straight line. But this is going to require financial means, technology, and the ability to mobilize a moral imperative. So to create a fashion system, it's a circular fashion system, it's going to require a systematic shift that builds long-term resilience, generates business and economic opportunities, and it's going to provide environmental and societal benefits. So the circular economy is a name given to a new style of supply chain, one that literally operates like a circle. And it is based on three principles: designing out waste and pollution points, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. So it's absolutely possible, but it's a redesigning and restructuring of someone's entire supply chain.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything? We've got a pretty. I thought I saw you, Pamela, wanting to add something.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that, and this goes back to the issue of claims, making claims in marketing. what I have been seeing is that competitors are calling out their competitors on claims that they think are not substantiated, claiming that the advertising is false and misleading and threatening to rat a company out to the FTC or other advertising organizations. So it's not just about I just wanted to mention it's not just the consumers that are the constituency. You also have to, it's a market that competes. And so these kinds of issues come up in claims about false advertising. I just wanted to make sure. I think somebody did allude to that earlier in the talk, but that it's important to. It's not just the consumers and the governments; it's your competitors.
Okay.
I may add
Gianmarco,
something,
please.
Bill, if you don't mind.
No, sure, please.
Both on the topic of transparency, traceability, and circularity, I go back to my point on the issue of variety. We can build up a transparent and traced supply chain, and we can set up new circular supply chain, provided companies reduce or narrow the product ranges, their physical product ranges. You can do it on a number of products. If then you have to change your range every season, introduce new things, if you are really into a fashion mode that you have to come up with something new, that is going to be, I think, extremely difficult for a lot of companies. So what I would expect that maybe because thanks to the I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, but the dematerialization of products. Somehow, if you go to a fashion brands and you buy, yes, you do buy a physical product, but you're also buying an NFT or you're buying an experience, whatever other things that you buy that are not tangible, somehow the side of making the physical products can somehow be more focused and being able to implement faster circularity and traceability. So I think that all this new thing about adding this type of intangible products is interesting. Another area is working on customizing products. So having a standard products up to a certain point and being able to build in customization with little things that you add later on, which are prints, which are little details. So you can build a sustainable supply chain for the standard product in a much easier way.
Wonderful. Coming off of this, the idea of reducing the number of SKUs, yes, and perhaps controlling drops. So, to what extent will the metaverse become a solution to what Gianmario is mentioning, and all of you have referred or alluded to? And I may add that on Bloomberg News this morning, I saw that Polo Ralph Lauren, is issuing a collection on Roblox, all right, and tweaking the Horseman logo. So that gives us legal questions, marketing questions, identity questions. And is it a solution in some sort to this overproduction and the drops, which have really insinuated themselves into the solution? They've undermined to some extent, as Gianmario points out, the solution. We've got to have less product out there. So is a Roblox, is a Sandbox, etc., are these, if you will, intangible, I'll call them products, and tweaking of brands? What's the implications of this? So is this a fashion trend?
Well, let me jump in on the brands. Brands that have products that are issued every season very quickly, like in the cosmetics industry, I mean, they're constantly coming up with new trademarks for new products. It's always a new product. And so when the products now have a environmentally friendly, sustainable angle to them, they often try to come up with trademarks that communicate that mission, purpose, emotion. And so, they look to their lawyers to clear these new marks to make sure they're available for use, and they register them if they're going to have they're going to be used, more than perhaps, for a few months. So we're seeing in that where there are a proliferation of SKUs, there's also a proliferation of trademarks, and trademarks are adjusted and they are re-registered in their new form. So because they are the symbol of that product and the source of quality and the source of mission or whatever the emotional content is for that product and brand. So, I think we're going to see that, and we're already seeing it, companies are trying to put some green related elements into their brands, but then what happens is it falls foul of what I said at the very beginning, which is you have to be able to demonstrate how you're green, how you are. So the labeling and the promotion has to do more than just have a generalized claim. On the issue of NFT drops, I find it's very interesting. I do a lot of speaking on NFTs. I've worked on a lot of NFT programs. It does seem that people are interested in buying NFTs. It's because of the experience. It's especially younger consumers. They live on their computers. These things all have value and meaning to them. There was a fashion show in the metaverse earlier this year where you could walk around in the metaverse and see stores. You could actually buy physical products from there. So there's always going to be this interesting interaction with the physical world as well. Yes, we're going to see brands expanding into the non-physical world. And have any of you done it? I bought a crypto kitty a million years ago, so I sort of can see the appeal. It'll be interesting to see how this develops.
Sydney, you want to add to that?
Again, I'll just add
from
it.
a fashion trend point of view. For example,
Absolutely.
is this really, will the metaverse become a complement to brick and mortar and to other non-metaverse platforms in online? Is this a new retail?
I think to be determined. I think the bottom line is companies want to grow year over year. So if they are going to sell fewer clothes at better quality, encouraging the customer to keep them longer, they're going to have to offset somehow. So I think it really depends on how an organization is going to offset. What I find one of the biggest trends, other than ones Pamela already spoke about in regards to like repair, reuse, recycle, or upcycle, is this whole notion of slow fashion. And Mario already kind of touched on, having like custom one of a kind. So that's very much slow production. Another kind is small batch. So that is manufacturing based on very small amounts between like 30 and 500. Another type is on demand. So this automation and data analytics that enable us to make an order based on what your customer is actually asking for. And then something that's been around for centuries is just handmade and artisanal. But what you're pointing to is companies have to come up with ways to create income for their organization. If you're a fashion brand and if it's not through clothes, how is it going to be? Is it going to be through services? Is it going to be through NFTs? What is it going to be?
So, John Mario and the panel,
Yes,
how are you
I
going?
totally agree what the other panelists said. I speculate a little bit on your example of Polo Ralph Lauren, hoping that there is no one that knows the situation there too well to put me wrong. But I just visited last week their new store in Milano, which is a beautiful store, and to me was a kind of step back in the past because the styles and the identity of the brands, the items were the same that I remember from the 90s. So you could really see the Polo Ralph Lauren, but elevated. So instead of having a basic wool sweater, it was going to be a cashmere, and instead of being $150, $180, it was a 400 type of item, and that was something very impressive. And on the other side, I got in touch very recently with, Polo Ralph Lauren has strengthened their manufacturing and sourcing hub in Italy, where they do quite a lot of production here or around Italy, so the upper part of the range. And this put together with what you were saying, Bill, about their effort now in the metaverse area or in these new dematerialized products, give me a little bit confirms a little bit what we were saying. No, in a sense, they are repositioning themselves with more valuable products, which most probably should last longer. So with the longevity, they could become items for a resale market, and that way they are. And at the same time, they are trying to develop business in other parts of the market, which may be the metaverse or the intangible part of the range of the future.
You know what comes up for me as I hear the three of you insightfully discuss this is we talk about reducing the collections and the drops and slow production and fashion. How does that align with the need for growth? And if we look at the metaverse with its huge consumption of power in order to drive it, in one sense, that sort of makes ESG objectives very difficult to achieve if that is a way to soften the amount of merchandise in the marketplace, physical merchandise. But the power that it takes may create more carbon issues, yes, and climate change issues than the solution it offers. So any thoughts about that? On the one hand, we want to make less drops, smaller collections, yes, more resale and recycle. But then we have the metaverse, which becomes almost a marketing tool, no? To drive more business. And the NFTs, perhaps, are they a complement or a lure to physical products? And therefore more consumption of more energy. Now, I know it's a big question, but anybody want to take a bite of it?
It's complicated. You touch a very complicated thing. Also,
yes,
because we don't know.
I know it's big. I know it's big. But to some extent, we've got to think about how these variables are playing against the whole ESG. All right? I mean, because this is stimulating growth, isn't it? The metaverse and NFTs, and especially if they complement and there are storefronts and you can buy, yet you're consuming huge amounts of energy to run the metaverse platform. Sydney, you want to?
Yeah. I'll just add one small thing. I think it really depends if you're a private company or you're publicly traded. If you're publicly traded, every 3 months you need to report out to the world, your shareholders, of how you're making a profit. Otherwise, your stock prices drop. If you look at some of the most progressive organizations that are addressing exactly what you're talking about, like an Eileen Fisher, like Patagonia, they're private. So they can make more ethical and value-based decisions within their own ownership and executive team versus kind of being pushed from the outside world to be profitable. So I think your question is really about, I think at this point, it's very hard if you're a publicly traded company to make the shift unless you actually are offsetting it through services or NFTs.
Okay. John Mario or Pamela, you want to add to that?
I can't really speak to the issue of absorption of energy, but one point I wanted to make about NFTs when you're selling NFTs and not NFTs associated with a product is that the issues of counterfeits is a really big problem and it could potentially explode on the in the metaverse. You know, you're probably aware of the lawsuit that Hermes filed against an artist called Mason Rothschild, who had created an NFT, which is the Birkin bag with sheepskin on top of it, and he sold it on OpenSea. And these things were going like on their first day for like $30,000 just for this NFT. And of course, Hermes brought a trademark, I think it's a trademark and copyright lawsuit against the artist. The artist said, I'm not a counterfeiter. I'm an artist. This is fair use. This is my art. I can do this. So this case is still ongoing. We don't know where it's going to go, but it does create an issue for the brands. You know, it's hard enough addressing counterfeits in the real world. Just think about what it's going to be like whack-a-mole if NFTs become as common as some people think it's going to be. By the way, one thing that's kind of funny about that situation is that the alleged counterfeiter, the artist, was complaining that other people were knocking off his NFT. In other words, they were knocking off the fake NFT. I thought that was that was a funny payback.
Anybody want to add to that?
No, I believe, Bill, I believe the correlation growth and sustainability is a very complicated one, very complicated.
No, it is at that. I totally agree with you. And something also that that Sydney was saying is the distinction between public and private companies
Absolutely.
creates a difference in possible strategies. Yes, there's absolutely no doubt about that. And that calls again for whether this idea of quarterly reporting, that somehow it gets in the way of the kind of ESG development that is necessary and being able to pivot when things aren't working quickly and what have you. So that's another issue that has to, it's a much more structural issue, isn't it? And very difficult to reverse at this point, but there's no doubt that that's a factor of some consequence. Are we going to see more regulations coming, do you think? And is that going to have some impact on trade and commerce? You know, we see the SEC, for example, rewriting the green guides for financial companies, for investment companies, even for any kind of investors. It doesn't have to be the big ones. It could be angel investors. The standards for communications, avoiding greenwashing. And what we see in New York State now, I think I think Sydney, you pointed that out, the New York State law, yes. So is that a good thing from the point of view of greenwashing? We would say yes. But does that also create an environment where companies are hesitant to advertise new products or advertise in a new way because they really don't understand what greenwashing protocols are and are not? And how do we navigate this sudden, again, FTC, EU, SEC, and the security exchanges, I'm sorry, the security commissions over in Europe too, are putting out very specific law regulations with very specific penalties. But again, language is a slippery slope, isn't it? And just reading something doesn't necessarily make it clear as to what to do and not to do. So it's a long-winded way in which I pose this question. Anyone want to jump in on this?
I'll just mention that it's also state law. We have 50 states, and a lot of states are jumping into the regulation of these kinds of things as well. California leads the pack.
Okay, is this going to help commerce? Is this going to put a damper on commerce? Is there a way for companies to do something internally, change the way their marketing department works?
I think it's not going to damper commerce. I think that companies will simply be having to take on people who are expert in these areas and keep up with the trends and the new laws to be able to guide them.
Okay. Well, we're getting to a little past the 10:30 hour. I want to ask one last question about brand and brand communication. John Mario has written a book on this with a colleague on this branded supply chain. How important are brand communications? Can brands tweak themselves to become conveyors of ESG and CSR values? And what are the risks in tweaking brand identities if that is the way in which we can get more effective, clear, and compelling ESG and CSR communications out into the market? Another big question, yes. We should always end on big questions.
Yes, Bill. A little bit. The thinking behind our book was that we live in a transparent, in what has become a transparent world. Supply chain were meant to be hidden. They were behind the business, behind the scene. So most of supply chains today are not ready, but they can be easily exposed because of the reason that we all know. And that's a big vulnerability. What we see is most of the companies jumping on a compliance bandwagon. There is an ecosystem of certifiers, platforms, indexes, convention. There is a huge in the book. We have an image with 300 little logos that nowadays brands, fashion brands, associate to themselves to prove that they are doing the right thing or they're moving in the right direction, which is fine, is natural. We'll probably keep on going like this. But what we try to put to elaborate a little bit is that at a certain point, brands will need to get into a more proactive phase, and that means being able to build up or to clean up or to redesign the supply chain to make at least a good part of them a kind of an ingredient for their branding and marketing narratives. Only by doing so, they will a little bit close the gap and then eventually make a brand that is meaningful and bring consumer closer to the idea that they will be happy to see less variety, less fashion crazy variety, more sustainability in what they are buying. This is a little bit in a nutshell the logic. For instance, we work on some cases, obviously starting from the luxury segments, but we look at what Ferragamo did in the last years, and you can really see in the last 5 or 6 years that what used to be a little laboratory outside Florence and move downtown in a fantastic building. Restructured with the famous architect, where now they have a museum, they have a prototyping laboratory, they have a lot of new young people applying for the job there. Then they have made their logistics something they show and they talk about much more in the past. They apply the code of conduct in their suppliers, the second and third level, and all these things have become part not only of their communication, not only in the annual report, but they really become part of their marketing communication, building up value for the consumer.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that? No. Is there going to be at some point a movement away from contract supply agreements? That is the incorporation of tier 2 and 3 suppliers into the idea of traceability and transparency. That is, if they're under contract, you know who they are, and you can trace back, if you will, more with less problems. Are we going to see anything like that? Because if we don't integrate this into a system, how do we solve the problem of traceability and keeping track of progress?
I make a
think,
little, I'm
sorry.
sorry, Cindy.
Oh, I was just going to say quickly, I think it really depends on the size of your organization. So if you take Laura Piana, they can own their entire supply chain, which we call a vertical supply chain, from they know their goats and they know their herders that are picking their goats and they know who's cleaning the yarn before they spin it, all the way up to a $2,000 garment. But most companies do not have the legacy or the desire to own their entire supply chain. And I think I think of the supply chain as almost like an iceberg. And, most companies, I would say 99% companies only know their first tier companies. But if you're a small to medium sized company, even large, where the yarn is actually coming from, somewhere in the world is a child picking it because they have a small hand in the cotton. And so it's almost impossible to track that. So I think, depending on the size of your organization, your desire to own your supply chain, but it is incredibly costly.
Okay.
If I can add something, like what we've seen once again, only for the luxury segments, we see quite a tendency of several companies to group. So somehow there is a little bit of a concentration effort at the moment, which is also generated by the economic situation. Other things is not only the sustainability. I think probably for you guys over there in the US is different. In Italy, where we had a lot of an extreme fragmentation of things, we see a lot of concentration going on. So the small guys, it's very difficult to be a very small company. So you used to say small is beautiful in the past. Small is not beautiful. At least you have to be medium, because otherwise too small is too. Probably we see in some cases concentration, or we will see large players in the upstream of the supply chain, which get so big and so with a lot of credibility, they do the right investment, and wherever they are in the market, they become reliable partners in a sense.
Okay. Christine, do you want to open for questions?
Hey, that was a very stimulating conversation, and I wish we could go on forever, because each time you share your thoughts, something new comes into play. So, but we will have to schedule that for another time. In the meantime, let me assure the audience that the floor is now open for questions. If you would like to type them in the chat box, we would welcome that. Or Sylvia can unmute you so that you can ask your question directly. I did want to recognize one of our board members, Anastasia Senyas, is in the audience. So Anastasia, welcome, and thank you for gracing the occasion. Let me start with the first question. So with all these new developments, in the industry, what types of careers do you see evolving as a result of this? And how should our students prepare for a career in this very exciting field? Many of our students are minoring in ethics and sustainability, so this is a hot topic for them. This is for all the panelists, including our moderator, Bill. Bill, do you want to start?
There are now at a variety of universities majors in sustainability. And again, the more liberal the university, for example, Berkeley has an entire program on that. So you might want to do some postgraduate work or take some courses. It's really good to begin with a certificate. And if you can't find the minor, or you want to embellish it. The other thing is, don't only apply to or look for a title like sustainability officer, because a lot of businesses are hiring through the HR or with marketing, the marketing department having a say in the hire or the job description. So because they're trying to integrate both HR and marketing and sustainability into a single kind of unit. So what I'm saying is be flexible, look to increase your own education, and at some point in time, pick an area, and I say this to clients as well, pick an area in ESG or CSR where you really feel a personal identification. You know, whether it's climate control, whether it's diversity and inclusion, whether it's about oceans or reforestation. This is such a vast area, and it's changing so quickly every day that you've got to become a specialist almost from the get-go. You know, have a general idea what it's all about in terms of sustainability. Again, as we pointed out today, a very wishy-washy word. It's become a category or a headline as opposed to a content. But anyway, an overview, and then pick out something in it that you become a specialist on. That's it.
Yes. So maybe John Mario, and then Pam, and then Sydney.
Yes, well, I think that this topic is opening up quite a lot of opportunities for the future. Again, talking only about fashion companies, that the one that I know something. I believe that in the marketing area, particularly what we are discussing with students and companies, that they are looking for, or they will be building up roles which are the kind of merchandising with a good understanding of the sustainability in the supply chain. So someone that, instead of being only oriented towards the market and the sellout, is also knowledgeable and can manage, the upstream activities. Also in the area of design, we're going to have, now, as we were saying earlier, more sustainable design, which is in the direction that I was mentioning, but also Sydney, I believe, was making some good remarks in this area. And also in the area of production, I understand that is something that, particularly in the US, has been given up, because virtually all textile, from the fiber to the garment makers, there is very little production left. But as company, we'll have to take more initiative in this area. Even if they don't make things themselves, they will need people which are smart and know the production side better than in the past. I close up, going back to what you were saying, Bill. I believe that more and more the future will be for people with a blend of with a mix of competences. The more you are capable to bridge two areas, which and the less conventional they are in the association, the better it is. The more somehow you will become valuable for companies that will need a lot of versatile people in the future.
Definitely. I mean, we really need people who can think on their feet and provide added value, to the
May
company.
I add to that, to what both Sydney and John Mario said, is that we need English majors. We need people who understand how to translate this new language that we have. We have words that people don't understand or know, and we need people who can write and communicate. And then we need, of course, the creative people to create with that as well. So don't feel that you have to be a technocrat in this space. And like to Joe Mario's point, you have to be a generalist in a certain sense as well. So it's an interesting combination and an interesting time. I want to mention, if I can, Christine, I've got that last slide, which lists 5 or 6 or 7 different companies with different orientations in terms of the students as well, which might be job opportunities.
Yes. So Sylvia, can you show that last slide?
While we're waiting for that, I just want to add to this. You know, a sustainability officer really didn't exist in the fashion industry even 5 years ago. So just know that everyone, it's almost a non-negotiable in all organizations now, and a small team to support it. I think the only thing I would add to the conversation is you need practical experience. Yes, you need a degree. Yes, you need certifications. But no one is going to hire you unless you've actually been in the field and tested some of your things. So there's so many volunteer programs internally, internationally. But I think that also would be one of my number one advices is it's not an academic thing. You have to really combine, as it's already been mentioned, your deep passion, if it's human rights, if it's climate control, along with practical experience.
I couldn't agree with that more. Can we get the last slide here?
Yep, I'm working on it.
All right.
On its way.
And does anyone want to add anything at this point to the summary about opportunity and what to do? All right, so here's some of these have been mentioned before, but one of the things that students can do is literally go up online and look at the mission statements to find where the brand attitude and brand persona is of the different companies that are really at the leading edge of the ESG and the CSR initiatives. Armed Angels in Germany, look at this, ignoring fashion since 2007. I love this tagline, really. Since 2007, I mean, we always look in the US at Eileen Fisher, who did this in 2009, yes? But look at this one, ignoring fashion. Janati, right? Everybody here, Pamela and Sydney. In other words, it isn't about, the fashion is in a certain sense getting in the way of our, of the ESG objectives in some sense. This is a great company. And and again, of course, they're global because of the web and what have you. So I like that, and it tells you their attitude. And if your attitude as a student aligns with this kind of, tell it as it is attitude, that's maybe the culture for you. So think about the culture of the company and how that aligns with you as a person. Ghani in Denmark, fabrics of the future. Here's a little more technical approach. They have this research lab where they really look for ways to transform products, or fabrics, I should say, in the light of ESG objectives. And again, there's different levels here of premium, of Armed Angels is really a fashion company with very good price points. Ghani, probably more premium. Stella McCartney, more luxury. So you have different levels of tiers here as well. Stella McCartney has given a lot of money, contributed to a $200 billion sustainable solutions fund to help other companies. So again, these are job opportunities and different levels with different cultures. We all know Patagonia, Let My People Surf is a book written by the founder. I mean, a wonderful indication of the culture again. So when you go look for a job, get up online or read up on the companies. There's plenty of articles. Does that culture align with who I am? Because you'll feel more comfortable and you'll bring more value as well to that company, and you have a better chance of getting the job if you're comfortable in the culture. This one is the last one. And by the way, there are many, many other choices, but this is limited by the size of the, of the slide. Look at Christy Dawn in the US. And here's the tagline, honoring Mother Nature. They have a section called Dresses from Farm to Closet. The very atmosphere of the website, the music, the tone, there's a sense of peace and serenity that characterizes this brand. And you can get, which I think is wonderful, you can buy cottonseed. And then in India, there is a farm and have your dress planted and literally see your dress grow, yes, and then be designed, and of course, buy it beforehand, and then you can recycle it as well. It's a wonderful process where they honor nature, bring jobs to local communities in India, and you literally and physically and mentally help to create not only the dress, but help to create a solution on a broad level of ESG and CSR objectives. It's a wonderful brand. And again, very limited, and you've all said this, in terms of the number of SKUs it issues every year. So it has a custom part. I think you mentioned that, Gian Mario. I think you did as well, Sydney, because you're making your own dress, aren't you? And it's a one-off, but you're contributing in an enormous way because you give purpose to the little community in India, the farm. Anyway, that's my final, if you will,
Yes,
remarks on this. Yes,
if I can add a thing, Bill, Sydney was talking about before this low fashion, no, for instance, the pre-order model is very, very nice. I don't know how familiar you are with the example of that, but now with direct to consumer brands a little bit suffering a little bit or being in a slow interest phase, but that would be the solution. No, we
yes,
order the garments that we want, we wait for them, we enjoy when we get them, we live the product, no, the fashion product in a totally different way, which is very romantic, is fantastic. Then at the same time, we live in the immediacy world where you get on e-commerce platforms and you look for same day delivery. Everything that you want has to be there immediately. These are the contradiction of our time, I believe.
absolutely well put. Can we have some closing statements or observations, Pamela, Sydney? We've gotten Gian Mario's. Would you like to add a final statement as to how you see yourself in this regard?
Well, I'll just say that I think that there are going to be very interesting opportunities for people to engage in this area. It's amazing to me that in the last few years, we've gone from advising our clients on sustainability issues to having our own sustainability officer for our firm. I think that I think everyone should be fluent in the kind of issues that we are facing in this area. Just on the issue of jobs, I think that now, of course, I'm a lawyer, and all law schools, of course, have many courses on these kinds of things. But what is interesting from this conversation is that it involves securities law and public companies, advertising and marketing, intellectual property, regulation, competition. It's a kind of thing where one should have an expertise, but it's also good for it to be part of a larger picture because it is always going to be a balancing of these ideas and these missions with commerce, profitability, productivity, other things that companies are going to have to take into account. So that's all I have to say.
Sydney, do you want to give us your final view of how you see this and where the students should be looking or going?
I think I'm just going to reiterate, first and foremost, follow your passion. Sustainability is huge on so many aspects and it's complicated. And, so you have to have passion and genuine interest of whatever you want to dig into. And it's going to be, and you can be a game changer if you use your unique perspective and your background to make that change. When I was the chief merchant and ran direct to consumer to Kate Spade, that was my job. And it was through my passion that I became intimate with social and environmental impact. And I was able to create a new channel for the organization based on my passion. So I guess another strong advice is go to a company that has strong values, that you feel that you are good for their culture, and get into an area that you deeply care about. And with these degrees around sustainability, you can actually be the catalyst within that organization to actually create a new division, create a new program, create a new anything. So I just want to encourage you to stand up for what you really believe, and that will make the biggest impact.
Amen. Very well put. Marty, do you have one? I see you're taking a note or two. My sense is you want to add something, please.
Yes, because although I may sound a little bit skeptical or cynical sometimes because I see a lot of things that are, but I think that there are very good opportunity for developing nice careers in this area. I believe that everything relies on the fact that you need to get a little bit below the surface to go deeper on the topics, now, which is about passion, willingness to study things. We live in a society where a lot of people accept to just stay on the surface of things. While if you go deeper, you can change. The young generation will need to change this. Will create the new industry, the new fashion industry, the new supply chains, and everything. And they have a chance to practice with what they do. How do they choose what do they choose to buy? No, we all know that we vote with our wallets. Let's start our practices on our own purchases, and then try to get into a more deep approach of the issues. Choose the right company. Try to understand the right company that fits with your passion. That's it.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank each of you. Truly, each of you are experts and wonderfully presented today. Christine, would you like to conclude?
Yes, thanks all of you. Really, three of you are board members, and hopefully John Mario will consider joining our ITM advisory board as well. And hopefully we can continue this conversation. It's probably the first or second of many that we're going to have. And I encourage our audience to be curious about this, especially it's a subject that's important to the Gen Z and the Alpha Gen, our latest generations to come, especially as 2030 is coming closer, and we're monitoring the progress in terms of achieving or not achieving the Paris Agreement. So thank you so much for spending a lot of time, with us rehearsing, preparing, and sharing your wisdom. Good. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.